Most people believe money is stable. They believe that if they earn more, save more, and hold cash, they are protecting themselves from uncertainty. They believe money represents safety, effort preserved, time stored for later use. Ray Dalio learned something far more uncomfortable. Money is not a store of value. It is a tool inside a system, and over long periods of time that system quietly erodes it. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but gradually, methodically, and almost invisibly. In the previous videos, we explored why poverty is systemic, how debt drives economic cycles, and why human behavior repeats the same mistakes under pressure. Those forces do not exist independently. They converge, and when they converge, they lead to a deeper realization. If debt is the engine of the system and human behavior accelerates it, then money itself cannot remain constant. It has to adjust, and historically, that adjustment almost always means losing value. Ray Dalio spent decades studying monetary systems across history. Empires, kingdoms, republics, modern nation-states, different political structures, different technologies, different cultural beliefs about money, yet the outcome remained strikingly similar. Money loses value over time, not because leaders are incompetent, not because policymakers are malicious, but because the system requires it to survive. Money is often treated as something solid, a fixed reference point, a neutral measuring stick used to compare effort, productivity, and success. But Dalio understood that money is not wealth. Money is a claim on goods, services, energy, labor, and future production. And claims can be diluted. When too many claims exist relative to what an economy can actually produce, the value of each claim must fall. When an economy grows primarily through productivity, money feels stable. When productivity rises faster than obligations, purchasing power holds. But when an economy grows through debt, pressure builds. Debt pulls future demand into the present, and that pressure must be released somewhere. Historically, it is released through the value of money itself. Ray Dalio observed that throughout history, governments have always faced the same constraint. They promise more than the system can easily deliver. Wars must be financed. Social programs must be sustained. Economic downturns must be softened. Stability must be preserved. But when obligations exceed real output, choices disappear, and trade-offs become unavoidable. There are only a few ways systems deal with excessive debt. They can raise taxes, which creates social resistance. They can cut spending, which creates instability. They can default, which destroys trust. Or they can devalue money. The last option is the least visible, and therefore the most politically acceptable. This is why inflation is so often misunderstood. People think inflation is chaos. Mistake. A failure of policy. Ray Dalio understood it as something else. Inflation is a pressure valve, a release mechanism inside a system that has accumulated too many promises. When too many claims exist relative to real goods and services, money absorbs the adjustment. Prices rise not because products suddenly become more valuable. They rise because money becomes less so. The system rebalances quietly, without formal declarations or obvious breaks. Dalio saw this pattern repeatedly across centuries. In ancient Rome, silver coins were gradually debased to fund military expansion and political stability. The numbers stamped on the coins stayed the same. The metal content did not. The currency survived. Its purchasing power did not. In medieval kingdoms, rulers clipped coins and reduced precious metal content. Again, The currency remained in circulation. Trust remained for a time. But purchasing power faded slowly, so slowly that most people never noticed it happening. In the 20th century, the gold standard limited this process. Money was constrained by a physical anchor, but constraints limit flexibility, and systems under pressure always seek flexibility. When the Bretton Woods system collapsed, money became fully fiat, not backed by gold, not backed by commodities, backed by trust, and trust can be expanded. Ray Dalio emphasized that fiat systems are not inherently flawed. They are adaptive. They allow governments to respond to crises without immediate collapse. They provide flexibility when rigid systems would break. But adaptability comes with a cost. The cost is long-term erosion. Money loses value not because systems fail, but because systems are trying to survive. When faced with collapse or gradual devaluation, systems choose survival every time. Dalio understood that money is always subordinate to stability. Preserving purchasing power is secondary. Maintaining continuity comes first. This priority is built into the structure of modern systems. This creates a hidden transfer of wealth. People who hold cash experience slow erosion. People with fixed incomes fall behind. People who think only in nominal terms feel confused. Their numbers rise, their lives do not. Inflation rarely feels dramatic in real time. It creeps, it compounds, it hides inside everyday prices, rent increases, and quiet adjustments. By the time people notice, years have passed, and the adjustment is already complete. Dalio pointed out that people misinterpret inflation because they think linearly. They notice prices rising. They blame companies. They blame politics. They blame greed. But inflation is structural. It emerges when debt-driven systems run out of room. The system does not announce devaluation. It reframes it. It calls it stimulus. It calls it support. It calls it stability. Language softens reality. Ray Dalio emphasized the difference between money and wealth. Money is a medium of exchange. Wealth is purchasing power preserved over time. Confusing the two creates false security. This is why people feel poorer even when they earn more. The system has shifted beneath them. Their reference point has changed, but their assumptions have not. Money losing value is not accidental. It is how systems avoid explicit default. Instead of breaking promises openly, they stretch them over time. Pain is distributed quietly, gradually, and unevenly. Dalio did not argue that this process was immoral. He argued that it was mechanical. Systems behave this way regardless of ideology: capitalist, socialist, imperial. The structure is the same. Those who understand this do not panic. They adjust expectations. They stop treating money as permanent. They start thinking in terms of cycles rather than guarantees. Dalio focused on diversification not as a tactic, but as a response to impermanence. No single currency, no single system, no single assumption. Money is never static. It moves with pressure. It bends under obligation. It erodes to preserve continuity. The greatest mistake people make is assuming stability because change feels slow. Slow erosion is still erosion. The system does not collapse suddenly. It adapts gradually, and adaptation always has a cost. Money losing value over time is not the end of the system. It is how the system survives. Those who plan only in nominal terms are exposed. Those who understand real value see the adjustment long before emotion arrives. Ray Dalio did not teach fear of money. He taught realism. Money is a tool, and tools change when systems demand it. The system does not warn you. It adjusts quietly, relentlessly, mathematically. Which do you think erodes wealth faster over decades? Inflation, debt, or blind trust in stability? You don't lose because money changes. You lose because you assume it won't. Once money becomes the adjustment mechanism, the system enters a different phase. Pressure is no longer theoretical. It becomes mathematical. Debt continues to grow. Obligations accumulate. Expectations remain anchored in the past. But real capacity does not keep up. At this point, the system stops asking how to grow and starts asking how to survive. Ray Dalio observed that every debt-based system eventually reaches this moment, the moment where promises exceed reality, where future income has already been spent, where confidence remains high, but flexibility is gone. This is where outcomes begin to feel unfair, but the process itself is neutral. When obligations become too large, systems lose options. Raising taxes creates resistance. Cutting spending creates instability. Defaulting destroys trust. Each option produces immediate and visible pain, and visible pain triggers backlash. So the system looks for an alternative, not a solution that removes pain, but one that delays recognition. One that spreads costs slowly, one that feels abstract. This is where inflation enters, not as an accident, not as a mistake, but as a structural response. Ray Dalio understood inflation as a release valve, a mechanism that allows real obligations to shrink without anyone explicitly breaking a promise. Prices rise, purchasing power falls, but contracts remain intact. Numbers stay positive. Institutions remain standing. Inflation does not announce itself. It does not arrive as a crisis. It arrives as normalization, as adjustment, as policy. When too many claims exist relative to real goods and services, money absorbs the imbalance. The value of each unit declines, not overnight, but persistently. This is how systems rebalance without collapse. Most people experience inflation emotionally. They feel it in groceries, in rent, in daily expenses, but they rarely understand its cause. They think prices are rising because companies are greedy or because supply chains are broken. Those factors may accelerate symptoms. They do not create the condition. The condition is structural. Too much debt, too many promises, too little real output. Inflation is not the disease. It is the response. Ray Dalio saw this pattern repeat across history with remarkable consistency, not in theory, in evidence. In ancient Rome, expansion required funding. Military campaigns were expensive, so the state reduced the silver content of its coins. The currency remained legal. The numbers stayed the same, but each coin bought less. People continued using money. Trade continued. The system survived, but purchasing power eroded slowly. In medieval Europe, rulers clipped coins and reduced precious metal content. Again, the system avoided collapse. Again, money survived. Again, value faded gradually. Centuries later, the gold standard imposed limits on this process. Money was tied to a physical constraint. That constraint created stability, but it also created fragility. When systems faced shocks, wars, depressions, crises, flexibility vanished, and without flexibility, systems break. Ray Dalio understood why the gold standard eventually failed, not because it was wrong, but because it was too rigid. Bretton Woods attempted a compromise. Currencies were tied to the dollar was tied to gold. For a time, stability returned. But debt continued to grow, obligations expanded, promises multiplied, and eventually the constraint became unbearable. When Bretton Woods collapsed, money became fully fiat, not backed by gold, backed by trust, and trust can expand far beyond physical limits. Dalio emphasized that fiat money is not inherently broken. It is adaptive. It allows systems to respond to shocks. It prevents immediate collapse. But adaptability comes with a cost. The cost is long-term erosion. In fiat systems, money adjusts more easily than expectations. Debts remain. Institutions persist. Purchasing power absorbs the pressure. This is why money loses value over time, not because of corruption, not because of incompetence, but because systems choose continuity over preservation. Ray Dalio learned that money is always subordinate to stability. Preserving purchasing power is optional. Preventing collapse is not. This priority explains why inflation is tolerated, why it is reframed, why it is normalized. The system does not say it is devaluing money. It says it is stimulating growth. It says it is supporting stability. It says it is protecting the economy. Language becomes part of the mechanism. Words soften arithmetic. Most people do not resist this process because it unfolds slowly, and slow change feels safe. But over long periods, the effect compounds, and compounding is relentless. This is why Ray Dalio did not treat inflation as a surprise. He treated it as a feature, a predictable response inside debt-driven systems. Money does not fail suddenly. It bends under pressure, and bending preserves the system. This is the historical pattern, not once, but repeatedly, across centuries, across cultures, across ideologies. The system survives, money adjusts, and most people only realize what happened after the adjustment is complete. Once money adjusts, the system stabilizes, but stability does not mean fairness. It means survival, and survival always has a cost. Ray Dalio learned that when money loses value, the impact is not evenly distributed. The system does not collapse on everyone at once. It redistributes pressure, quietly, mathematically. Those who hold cash experience erosion, not as a single loss, but as a slow leak. Purchasing power fades year after year. What once felt safe begins to feel insufficient. People with fixed incomes fall behind even faster. Their numbers remain stable, but the world around them moves. Rent rises. Food costs increase. Services adjust. The gap widens. Most people do not notice this happening in real time. They feel it emotionally, not analytically. Life feels tighter. Progress feels slower. Effort produces less relief. Ray Dalio emphasized that this experience often feels personal. People believe they are falling behind because they failed, because they were careless, because they made poor choices. But the cause is systemic. The system does not ask who deserves what. It responds to pressure, and pressure flows through money. This is how wealth is transferred without explicit force. No assets are seized. No accounts are frozen. No announcements are made. Value simply shifts. Those closest to fixed claims lose flexibility. Those positioned closer to real assets adjust more easily, not because of morality, but because of structure. This is why inflation feels confusing. People see prices rise, they see their savings intact, and yet they feel poorer. The system has not taken their money, it has changed what money represents. Ray Dalio often pointed out that people think in nominal terms. They focus on numbers, balances, income. But systems operate in real terms: purchasing power, energy, resources, time. When these two perspectives diverge, confusion emerges. People believe progress is being made, but their lived experience disagrees. This disconnect creates frustration. People search for explanations. They blame companies. They blame governments. They blame markets. But Ray Dalio understood that the system is not reacting emotionally, it is adjusting mechanically. Inflation does not punish effort. It ignores it. It does not care how hard someone worked, it responds only to imbalance. Over time, this reality reshapes behavior. People save less. They take more risk. They search for protection, sometimes in the wrong places. The system adapts again. Cycles continue. Ray Dalio did not see this as pessimism. He saw it as realism. Money is not a promise. It is a policy tool. And policy tools change when systems demand it. This is why Dalio focused on diversification, not as a tactic for profit, but as a response to impermanence. No single currency, no single country, no single assumption about stability. Money is never static. It moves with pressure. It bends under obligation. It erodes to preserve continuity. The greatest mistake people make is assuming stability because change feels slow. Slow erosion is still erosion, and compounding does not need drama to be devastating. The system does not collapse suddenly. It adapts gradually, and adaptation always shifts cost somewhere. Money losing value over time is not a failure of the system. It is how the system avoids failure. Those who understand this are not immune, but they are not surprised. They do not confuse numbers with security. They do not mistake stability for permanence. Ray Dalio did not teach fear of money. He taught respect for systems. Money is powerful, but it is never independent. The system does not warn individuals when it adjusts. It does not send notifications. It does not explain itself. It adjusts quietly, relentlessly, mathematically. And most people only realize what happened when they look back, when years have passed, when purchasing power has already shifted. This is not a story about loss. It is a story about structure. Money does not exist to preserve value forever. It exists to keep systems functioning. And when forced to choose, systems always choose survival. Which force do you believe erodes wealth more over decades? Inflation, debt, or blind trust in stability? You don't lose because money changes. You lose because you assume it won't.